Hi, my name is Anthony Turner. I'm one of the directors of the Small Business Institute, and today my guest is John Dee, and welcome, John. John has got a very long background in sustainability, and I'd really like to bring some of those concepts for our viewers and listeners. So, John, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about how you actually got started in the sustainability sphere of life, because it's not something that has been around for that long, but I guess it always has.
Look, it has. My first job full-time in the environment space and the sustainability space was back in 1986 in London, where I worked for an organisation called Earthlife. And Earthlife was very interesting because it was the first of the environmental groups that was very pro-business and was not afraid to say so. And the byline of the organisation was where conservation means business. And it had a twofold meaning. Firstly, we wanted to show that we meant business. We wanted to get measurable results. But also, we had this argument that for conservation to be truly successful, we need to show that the environment can pay its way. We wanted to get people thinking that if you're conserving energy, if you conserve raw materials, you can often make more money. So we wanted to try and advance economic arguments in favour of sustainability. We also wanted to do things like putting a value on rainforests. So the potential of rainforests, for example, to provide us with new cures, so that rather than chopping down rainforests for wood, what if we kept it going and had sustainable buffer zones around it? What if we could find new drugs, new solutions in the forest that actually we could turn into new income? And so to try and change the way we looked at the environment, because a lot of environmental groups at that time, and to some degree still today, we rely too heavily on this think about the kids, think about the environment, when a lot of the change that we can bring about right now, you could just purely use an economic argument in favour of it, like with my new book, Energy Cut. It's 450 pages. It shows small business owners, medium-sized business owners, how to massively reduce their electricity and gas bills. And not once do I mention environment, climate or carbon, because we simply don't need to. And so I've always very much strongly advocated this economic approach to preserving the environment, because where we have an economic argument, we should just stick to that and not confuse people, because if we've got the bottom line on our side, just stick to that argument and that alone, I believe.
Yeah. Look, in terms of our audience, I mean, it makes good business sense. I mean, environmental. I guess one of the things that I've noticed is that there is a confusion between what is environmentalism versus sustainability. Could you maybe sort of differentiate where those two sit against one another? Yeah,
look, I think basically with environmentalism is about trying to protect the environment, full stop. Now, sustainability is a threefold thing. Sustainability is about sustainability of the environment, it's about economic sustainability, and it's about social sustainability. So there's three tiers there. And so for true sustainability, you've got to look after the environment, the economy, and also the community. Whereas environmentalism can often just look at the environment alone. And for us as a society to be truly healthy, to have what I believe the optimum conditions for business, you've got to have true sustainability. You've got to look after all three elements. Because for business to be truly successful, you've got to have a successful society. For business to be truly successful, we need to know that the resources on which business is based are going to be there sustainably for the long term. And this is one of the real concerns that we have in the world today. We have 7 billion people now on the planet. By 2050, we're going to have 9 billion people. We have a situation where we have finite resources, and therefore more and more people means more demand for the resources that are there. And just basic economic theory has it that the more demand there is, the more price will go up. And as we have more environmental problems, as climate changes, as other issues take place, the issue is at what point do we run out of certain raw materials? At what point does it become too expensive to get those? And that is a real issue that a lot of people haven't yet grappled with. And that's what I'm interested in, is how do we find economic solutions to the environmental problems, because if we can look after the economy and the environment at the same time, we need to give equal priority to both of those, because that business needs that.
Certainly. One of the statistics that I heard of not that long ago was that in terms of our usage of raw materials, particularly, at the moment our consumption is something like 1.5 to 2 times more than what the renewable factor of those resources are.
Yeah, look, it's interesting. Yeah, there's a study being done that estimates that we're using 1.5 planets worth of resources every single year.
Yes.
So there's a term for this. It's called ecological capital. We're eating into the ecological capital.
Yes.
You know, we've inherited this amazing resource, the planet, and if we were to use it sustainably, we could underpin a business way into the future, not worry about it.
Yes.
The problem is right now we are so inefficient in the way we're using our resources, and we're using up, you know, non-renewable resources at a rate of knots that means our children or our children's children aren't going to have access to the same resources that we have today, that we take for granted today.
Yes.
So one of the critical things we need to look at is, well, how are we going to use water more sustainably?
Yes.
How can we start getting water out of the air efficiently? So rather than relying on water, you know, in aquifers or water in our waterways, you know, how can we grab water out of the air? That's one of the solutions that we've really got to look at, because you can already buy equipment or lease equipment where we could put it here in the office and it's not plugged into any tap, and you can get water out of the air, chill it, and that's where you get chilled water. You're getting the water from the air. And so I was at a cotton farm up in Burke about 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. And their dams there, they're like 1 kilometre by 1 kilometre, and it's virtually empty. Yet there's a huge amount of water in the air that we're not tapping that could fill that and give sustainability to the cotton industry up there. Yeah. And so there's a lot of solutions out there within our economies that we're just not tapping into. Sure. And so one of the reasons why I wrote the Sustainable Growth book, one of the reasons why I wrote the Energy Cut book, is I'm really fascinated about the huge business opportunities for Australian businesses to tap into the solutions that won't just make our businesses more resilient and more successful, it will give us the opportunity to take that know-how and sell it overseas. Now, if you look at solar as an example, we were leading the world on that. Yet now, so much of that know-how has ended up going overseas, and we're not tapping into the huge potential that's there. So there's, I think, as a country, we've been too lazy in taking up those opportunities, because we've been too used to the world coming to us. The world comes to us for our resources, it's come to us for our wool and other materials. And so we haven't had to, you know, but if you look at the CSIRO and other areas of our operations, we're really good at innovation.
Yes.
We can be very successful when we apply ourselves with new ideas. We're very good at being early adopters, but we're not taking advantage of this biggest business opportunity of all. Yes. And that is, this is a huge growing global population. How are we going to do more with a lot less?
Yes.
In a way where we can keep the quality of life that we have now, where our kids have the same opportunities that we have now. That is the biggest business opportunity of all. And that's why I've tended to focus my work and writing on the economic opportunities that are there, and the potential to save money and become more efficient.
Yeah. A lot of the savings and everything else seems to be very much at the low end, so, you know, change a light globe and that sort of stuff. And I don't mean that, you know, that doesn't have an impact, because it does, obviously. What can be done, or what is being done on sort of the more macro level, so in the political environments and things like that? I mean, we've seen, you know, Al Gore with his, you know, environmental campaigns and all these sorts of things. There's a lot of, you know, scientific fors and against, an argument backwards and forwards, as you would expect from a scientific community. But what can we do, sort of, you know, more grassroots level, to actually influences, you know, create an influence for the political and the scientific communities to actually, you know, get things really happening? Because one of my concerns is that there seems to be a lot of short-term thinking in the hierarchies rather than the longer term.
Look, it's interesting. There is this real short-term thinking and wrong thinking. I mean, this addiction we have to coal doesn't make sense, because if you look at the rest of the world, I travel internationally a lot, the world is really confused by Australia's position on coal is good. Coal is not good. Coal is very bad for the environment. It's very bad from a climate change perspective. And also, just look at the way the world's going. Solar has come down in cost by 80% since I got my first solar panels. We're now at a situation where Tesla have just brought out this super cheap battery, which can be used by households and businesses. And I look at myself as an example. In my own home, I've only got a 5 kilowatt solar system, but I've got a battery setup, which is lithium ion. So in the daytime, my home-based businesses are totally solar powered. And the excess power that I'm generating, I don't sell into the grid cheaply to an electricity company who then make money out of my investment. I instead store that in batteries. And so when you get to the peak time of the day where we're paying the most for electricity, I take my business off the grid. And we're using batteries that have been charged up by the sun, the free power of the sun. And that then runs, you know, so in that peak time of where you pay the most, we're not paying anything. And then at night time, when it comes to midnight, our battery system then grabs cheap off-peak electricity, and then between 7 and 9 in the morning, when you've got shoulder price electricity, again, we take ourselves off the grid and we just use batteries. And so our house and our businesses are totally battery powered at the most expensive time of the day. And what's interesting from an Australian perspective is, why are we focusing on coal, which is expensive and has been going up and up and up in price, and you've got all the pollution problems with it, when the clean energy alternative now is not only coming down in price, but now that batteries have come along that are going to be so cheap, we've just reached, literally overnight, this tipping point, which is super exciting for businesses, because the degree of control we're going to be able to have on our power is going to be enormous. Where we, in the past, the traditional relationship between an electricity company and a business is, this is the electricity, you use it, you'll pay what we're charging you for it, you have no option. And some businesses, you just have to use the power whether you like it or not. What's going to happen now with all this new technology that's coming out is it's going to dramatically slash bills. So for me, we have got a house and two home businesses that has a lot of tech. We've got 5 computers, 2 big large screens, lots of iPads, lots of equipment, and yet our quarterly bill was $45. And on top of that, I'm charging an electric car as well. So I'm actually, when that excess solar I'm getting in, I'm also charging a car up as well, a 4-wheel drive Outlander that also has electric storage on it. So it's really interesting. I think people are only now starting to wake up to the fact that there's a massive change is now rolling out for businesses and households on where do we get our power from. We actually, and I'm an example, most of my power, I generate it myself off my roof and I store it internally, and it's slashed my bill. So a lot of businesses I come across, if they haven't done any energy saving, can easily reduce their energy bills by 1/3. What I've done is I've reduced mine by about 95%. And I know some people are actually not even paying bills. They're actually fully generating their own electricity.
What is the impact of that, though, on terms of sustainable infrastructure? Because, if everybody went down that pathway, what I can see is that potentially is that people are going to be isolated in terms of their power supplies as distinct from connected. Is that an issue, or is that...
Well, I think the advantage of having a grid there, it's a good backup. And it's, in some ways, the electricity industry is about to go through its own Yellow Pages moment. You think about the value of Yellow Pages. There was a humongous offer made by that business about 2010, 2011, which was rejected. They've just sold it for lower hundreds of millions of dollars, because the idea of this big dead tree Yellow Pages book being dumped on everyone's doorstep is irrelevant, because we've all got smartphones. And so that business model died overnight. And in some ways, we're kind of getting to that similar position right now with utilities, where the business model they've had, and which has served them very well, but it hasn't served business very, us, as normal, small business owners, it hasn't served us well. It costs us way too much. It's one of our biggest expenses. They're about to have a Yellow Pages moment, because the technology of the alternative, the solar power, has come down in price. It's getting more efficient. You can then store the excess solar rather than trying to sell it to someone. You can use it yourself and avoid paying peak price electricity, which is what I'm doing. And I know a lot more businesses are doing that. And so a good example of this is Paperbarks. It's a small bookshop / news agency in Albany, in WA. Albany is very interesting. They've got some very interesting stuff happening there. They put a 10 kilowatt solar system on the roof. They just changed all their lighting to LED. Just those two actions for that small business is saving them $20,000 a year. Now, the question that
you have... A lot of money, isn't it?
Well, for a small business in Albany, that's a huge amount of money.
Yes.
And the owner is now in a position where instead of giving $20,000 a year of his money to his local electricity company into their bank account, he is now prioritizing his bank account. And that $20,000 is going back to him. And that's the question that everyone watching now needs to think about. What is more important, your electricity company's bank account or your bank account? And what I talk about in the book is the need to prioritize you and your business. Because, as an example, if I'm talking to, say, a room full of 50 people, only maybe 2 or 3 business people in that room will have bothered to call up the electricity company to say, can you give me a better deal? And I'll give you an example. Yes. I was in a small town recently and I said to them, right, within half an hour of leaving here, call your electricity company, say you're not happy with the deal, what are you prepared to offer me? And ask for 18%. I said, because that's now become quite normal. And so the motel I was staying at went and immediately called, and he said, I've been with you 15 years, I'm thinking of changing because I think you're charging me too much. And they said, well, we don't want to lose you. How about I knock 18% off your tariff? Just like that. One phone call, 18% immediately. And of course they said yes. They didn't even need to change companies. Yes. And then he said, well, how is it that I've been a customer for 15 years, I give you, nearly over $15,000 a year, and you've never bothered to call me to say, there is a better deal available, are you interested? And the answer was, we don't operate like that. And so the one thing to remember is the electricity companies don't give a damn about your business. All they're interested in, if you don't call your electricity company, they will automatically charge you the highest rate tariff they can. But if you bother to call them up, you'll immediately get a huge saving. And that saving you can put into things like getting energy efficient lighting, in making sure you're fully insulated and draft proofed, and then that then saves you even more money. So what I found is that when companies do actually bother to call up, you instantly get 15 to 18% off your bill, and then you can then look at investing that into energy efficiency, which really cuts your costs even more. So I find with nearly all businesses, and I literally have gone to thousands of businesses, even if you've done nothing before, you can easily get a 30, cut your bill by a third. But I'm now meeting more and more and more companies, and they're nailing it. They're getting so much happening in terms of financial savings, reducing their energy use. And when you get into reducing energy use, what you then start looking at is, okay, well, if I can be that much more efficient with energy, you then often find other forms of efficiency and productivity enhancements in the rest of your business. Because once you have a few wins with your electricity, it's amazing how you then start looking at other things you can do. And so an interesting one was La Porchetta, the franchised restaurant chain, did great Italian food. And one of their franchise holders basically decided to get a pizza oven from America. Mm-hmm. What was interesting about this pizza oven was that it cooked the pizzas a third faster. So in a turnover business where you've got to turn over people as fast as you can, having a pizza oven that cooks a third faster is a real advantage. But what they also found was that it used a third less gas. So you're instantly saving thousands of dollars on your gas bill. You're getting more productive in terms of the pizza throughput. You can get more covers, so you get more customers coming in. Yep. And often if you have more covers and you get that efficiency, you often get less food waste. Yes. And so it's really interesting how in that instance, getting a pizza oven just to maybe cook the pizzas a bit faster had all these other beneficial knock-on effects. And I find that if you look at the book Energy Cut, which you can download for free from energycut.com.au, it's amazing how I found over 100 businesses that made the shortlist that are in the book, and you look at the different steps. So in the lighting step, we give you all the examples of companies who've successfully changed their lighting and are saving a fortune. A good example is McDonald's. If you look at the yellow arches, they used to have fluorescent tubes in the yellow arches. So they've changed that now to LED tubes. Now, the LED tubes instantly will reduce energy use by 60%, but the real benefit is that these LED tubes last a lot longer. So because they last longer, it means you're not spending all that money paying someone to go up and down changing the lighting, which is actually more expensive than the energy. So what McDonald's said in a report to the federal government is that by going to long life lights, they were saving more on maintenance than they were on electricity, and the energy savings were pretty big. They also said the lighting was more uniform, so you get better quality lighting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The payback period was only 1.6 years, and that's for lighting that's going to last up for 50,000 hours.
Yes.
So the financial savings are huge, but one of the bits of advice for lighting is, remember, just put a cost in there for maintenance, because if you get the long life lights, you're not paying someone to go up and down.
That was something I picked up on what you're saying, is often, I think a lot of small business owners, and we deal with the Institute, we deal with lots of small business owners, what we find is that they often see the initial cost, but they actually don't do the additional sums of the maintenance and all of the ramifications. Yes. I look at what's the ripple effect of making that decision, and that's probably where a larger proportion of the savings can actually be made based on what you're saying.
Yeah, so with lighting, for example, maintenance, always include the maintenance costs.
Yes.
It's huge, and most people don't even begin to think. They just go into a lighting shop or they talk to a lighting expert and they say, $20 to $24 each, you've got to be kidding. I'll just go with my normal stuff. What they're not thinking about is the fact it's going to reduce energy use by 60 to 80%. So your lighting bills are going to come down by 60 to 80%. That's a big chunk of your bill for many retailers, for example. Then the maintenance savings are huge, and people never include that. Yes. And you must include it, because then the whole maintenance side of your operation, it becomes a lot cheaper. And then, of course, looking at the kind of productivity, you get better quality lighting. It's interesting with, if you have the T8 fluorescent tube, it's the most common form of tubes that you get in offices. And what was interesting talking to a major supermarket is they said that the UV rays from those fluorescent tubes makes food go off faster. If you talk to newsagents who've gone and put in LED tubes to replace those, they've said the old-fashioned fluorescent tubes that most of us use in our offices, it actually fades magazine covers, it fades advertising material. So that UV light, the UV that comes out of those fluorescent tubes, it's really bad for business. It actually makes things go off. Yeah. Most people are not aware of that.
I wasn't aware of that, yeah.
And so, so the saving, your food lasts longer. If you're selling food, LED lights make the food last longer. They make the magazines stay fresh on shelf. So there's lots of these kind of side benefits that you get there.
So we're talking about running costs, and often these are the hidden costs, aren't they, John, of where people don't actually understand. And you were one of the things that I think you were talking about or suggesting is that people don't actually look at the actual running cost of equipment prior to they actually purchase it.
Now, this is interesting. When I do my speeches around Australia, one of the questions I ask is, hands up, how many of you business owners actually look at the running costs of equipment before you buy it? Virtually no one ever puts their hand up. Yeah. And it's really important that we do this, because when you're buying a piece of equipment, it's always good to look at an alternative. Yes. Because people often think, well, I'm going for that one because that's what I can afford. What they don't do is then think, well, maybe the more expensive alternative that might give you a better result all round, maybe the running cost of that might be thousands of dollars cheaper over 10 years than the one that you think you can afford. Sure. And so it's really, really important that when you're buying a piece of equipment, ask them, okay, how many watts does it use? And then work out, okay, well, how many hours a day are you going to use it? And what I show in the book is how you actually come up with the sums on this, so you can then work out, okay, my running costs over 10 years at 8 hours a day of this is going to be this many dollars, whereas this one here is going to be this many dollars less. And you often find the more expensive piece of equipment that's often better made, is more energy efficient, and will save you a lot of money. And so, for example, energy rating stars, with things that we use in our businesses like refrigeration and all these things that have energy rating stars on them, every star that's on there, every extra star is usually about a 10 to 20% efficiency saving. So they're going to be 10 to 20% cheaper to run with every extra star. So sometimes I've been with friends to buy equipment, and you get some salesperson saying, oh, it's all rubbish, these things don't count, and they just want to flog you the one they're going to get the most commission on. But there's a really good website, the energyrating.gov.au website, has all that kind of equipment there. You also have an American website, the Energy Star website, and that is a very good site for buying a whole range of equipment that they've got listed there. And one thing I'm going to try and do is get an Australian version of that site running, because a lot of equipment we have in Australia is coming from overseas anyway. It's already been energy rated overseas, and so we're going to try and make those kind of tools more easily available. But within the Energy Cut book, we've got links to tell you where to go and get that information. Great. So if you want to do some comparison, we show you where the websites are that allow you to do that.
Yes.
And also, if that is not available, we tell you how to calculate it with just yourself. It's actually a very easy process, but it's one that very, very few business people do, much to the detriment of their own profits.
Yeah. One of the classic examples I see of this running cost sort of thing is probably things like printers for computers, where people, you can get the printer for $50 or something like that, or we'll give it to you for free, but they really don't realise exactly how much they're paying via their consumables.
Yeah, so you're paying so much more for the consumables. And what's interesting is I've looked at companies where they've actually consolidated, because rather than having lots of individual printers, sometimes it's good to just have one printer where you've literally got to put your thumbprint on or put a code in and be accountable for your printing. Yes. And that's when you find out who's doing the printing for your kids' soccer club on weekends and stuff. You get, they're called rabbits in the industry. They just chew on paper non-stop, But it's interesting where the way to go is more and more companies are going fully paperless on things like billing. So if you digitize and you just send out everything automatically, then you've got the advantage of you're not having to buy postage stamps or pay for postage. And the postage, you pay to have it get there 2 days, 3 days later, whereas an email is effectively free compared to that. And then you've got the handling of printing it, the paper costs, the energy costs of the printer, the leasing costs of the printer, then you've got to have someone fold it, you've got to have someone walk down to the post office, all these additional kind of costs that you don't have with email. So many more companies are now digitizing their billing operations, and it makes so much sense. Storing things, with data, documents, being able to store it. I've got a new app I've just brought out on the App Store for iPads. And it's a business organizer for small businesses, where you can put all your key documents, track all your key clients, track all your key contacts, your networks, projects, tags. It's taken me 2.5 years to develop, but it's part of my drive for efficiency. So I've used this app to write the Energy Cut book. I use it to run my businesses, and so I've now finally released it, because I actually developed the app for myself to run all my different operations, and so I've now actually brought it out. It's called Agadoo, and one of my interests in efficiency is that a lot of small businesses are very inefficiently run because everyone is so busy. And we're trying to keep the work coming in, we're trying to keep the wages being paid, and in the process for all that, it's quite exhausting. And so what I've been looking at, whether it's with the Agadoo app or whether it's with the Energy Cut book or the Sustainable Growth book, it's about finding easier ways of getting things done, doing more with less, having less brain power, having to go into running your businesses. And so what I've tried to do is, how come the Agadoo app is about simplifying life, because you put everything into the app and that does the remembering for you. It's like having a 24-hour-a-day PA that never forgets. Because the problem with business is trying to remember everything, and then you get exhausted from it. And then when you're running the business, we run businesses very, very inefficiently in Australia. We run inefficiently with our energy. We run inefficiently with our material use. And people think, oh no, people think, I've set up the business, I'm successful, I'm running it, I'm making a profit. But my argument is, you know what, you could be making a lot more money by running it more efficiently. And if you have a downturn, being run more efficiently is the difference between going out of business and hanging in until things improve. And I've seen so many businesses who have gone through downturns, and because they've been really efficient in how they use energy, they've been efficient to the max in how they use materials, they've been able to weather very, very tough economic conditions or downturns in their market when their competitors have then gone bust. So maximising efficiency right across the board really makes a lot of sense.
John, a lot of our clients are actually small business clients. So they're the mums and dads, the so-called engine room of the economy, as everybody talks about them. Typically with turnovers of, less than $200,000, In terms of those sorts of businesses, yeah, what would you say to those businesses to actually prioritise on how could they? What are the key things that they can do to actually ensure their sustainability in difficult times? Because often with those businesses, cash flow is a real issue for them. You've probably been there. I've been there.
Look, I'm there all the time. It's as anyone who's running a small business, you've got to keep the momentum and energy going. Yeah. So first thing is always call up your energy company, and ask for a better deal. If you've never done that, you're going to instantly knock 15 to 18% off your energy bill. Yes. So that's a no-brainer. Then the key thing is to look at your thermostat. So a thermostat, like here we were like it's on 22, and it should be on 20. So that means it's every degree you go above 20 to 21 degrees, that's a 10% increase in your heating bill, like we're coming up to winter now. So, and most businesses I go into though, have got their settings at 24 to 26. So most businesses I go to and most households are running about 40 to 60% higher cost-wise on heating and cooling than they need to be. Right. So, ideally you need to set it at 18 to 20 now in winter time. But then looking at lighting, lighting's a no-brainer. If you can get LED lighting, get rid of the other lighting, don't wait for it to go. Replace it with LED. You're going to look at a return on investment of less than 2 years. Yes. And if you're getting lighting that lasts 25,000 hours, then get a 3-year guarantee on that. If it's a 50,000 hour claim, get a 5-year guarantee, and go for well-known brand names. Get a brand name that you know is going to be there. So if the light goes before its guaranteed period, you'll get it replaced for free. And so a well-known brand name is important. Or go to someone like Beacon Lighting, who are going to be around for, been around for years. They will continue to be around for years. So that's important there. And then just looking at equipment, how can you switch things off? Because about 10% of your electricity bill is just leaving things on standby. And so if, for example, you have a drinks fridge, you have a cafe, you can actually, if you shut at 6 o'clock, you can get a $20 plug timer that will turn off your drinks fridge. And then if you open again at 7 in the morning, have it switch back on at 5 or 6 in the morning, and you'll find you can halve the energy use of one of the most energy intensive pieces of equipment. Same goes for things like coffee machines, just turn them, have a plug that turns them off. It's a no-brainer. If you've got one of those zip water boilers, again, have it turned off at the end of the day. A $20 plug timer will save you $100 to $150 a year turning off those water boilers after hours and over weekends. Because it's amazing how many people leave stuff on. And I have audiences who go, no, I'm really good at that. And so I then put up a picture of a Wi-Fi, like a Wi-Fi unit, and say, hands up, who leaves the Wi-Fi on when they go to bed at night? And of course, everybody puts their hand up. Only 1 or 2 people will turn off the Wi-Fi. But we leave Wi-Fi units on 24 hours a day, even when we go to sleep, even when we go to work. We leave them on at home, we leave them on in the workplace. And it amazes me how many small businesses just leave stuff on, thinking, I can't be bothered to turn it off. You should always turn things off at the plug. And there's a very, very cheap way of monitoring your energy use. It's a company called Effigy, and it's $130. You plug it onto your electricity meter, and that sends a signal to another little piece of equipment you put into your Wi-Fi unit. That sends a signal up into the internet, and then using a free app that you can get for your iPhone or your Android phone, it'll actually show you every 6 seconds how much power you're using and how much it's costing you. It's a very cheap way to monitor your ongoing energy use. And they even have an app where you can have these Wi-Fi plugs. If you've got a piece of equipment that uses a lot of energy, you can plug it into a Wi-Fi enabled app. And then again, this is Effigy, you can remotely turn off that piece of equipment. So the way I use it is, I use it for parental reasons. So no matter where I am in the world, I was in Bristol recently, and where Olivia Newton-John and I are running One Tree Per Child with Bristol City Council. And I knew it was 4 o'clock back in Australia. I set an alarm. And so I looked on this app, and I could see the kids had turned on the TV entertainment system at 4 o'clock. So I just turned it off on my phone from Bristol, and they were back in Katoomba in the Blue Mountains. So I get this phone call, Dad, did you just turn off the TV set? piano practice, homework, then I'll turn the TV back on for you.
Yeah.
And so you can use it to either turn off equipment in your business, or you can use it at home as well to, to keep the kids on track with homework.
Yeah.
But we're getting more and more now this we call the Internet of Things, where more and more things are accessible via the net. And it's going to be exciting because it means that we can actually really control the amount of energy we use and keep tabs of things. And if you've got people working for you, say you've got a small shop, someone else is working on the weekends for you, you can keep an independent tab on them to make sure they haven't got too much turned on. Sure. Because you can actually, with these apps, you can actually have a little alarm that comes up. If someone is using too much energy, it'll ring in your pocket and say, hold on, the staff we've got there are turned on too many things. And so you can keep a remote eye on things as well. So there's some very exciting stuff and all of this is in the Energy Cut book, where I've gone and looked at hundreds of businesses and found the best money-saving ideas, the best energy-saving ideas, and then put in there these little orange boxes that have all these case studies of how everyone else is doing it, because we can't be expected to do all this and learn it all on our own. We're all too busy.
Yeah.
So luckily I got 2 years of funding to go out and find all this stuff and put it in one book. Yeah. And the good thing is it's free of charge.
We've actually got the book here, so that if anybody's actually wanting to have a look at the book, this is the book, and it's available through the website again is?
Yeah, so it's energycut.com.au, and you'll see a big download button. So people who've been coming to the speeches get a hard copy, but everybody else, no matter where you are in Australia, thanks to the federal government, Department of Industry and Science, you can download the book free of charge, and it's designed to be read on an iPad or a computer screen. The PDF version of the book is fully interactive, so it's a very easy way to get stuff. And the energycut.com.au website has got all the information on there. So if you find, say, you want to change your lighting, you can actually type in whatever type of lighting you've got, and we'll show you what the alternative is.
Sure. And look, I've had a look through the book, and congratulations on it. It's a very easy read, and I love the fact there's lots of visuals in there. So instead of the XYZ 35 or whatever it is, there's a picture, so I can actually understand what an XYZ 35 is.
Yeah, look, I'm glad you mentioned that, because a good example is T8. You say to people, change your T8 tube lighting. People have no idea what you're talking about, but that is the main form of lighting in offices. But having a picture of it, you can then go, okay, I get that. Then there's a little table that says, here are your alternatives, and this is the best one. And then we've worked on that with the New South Wales government, and they've got an expert team on lighting. And so what we're trying to do is write it in plain English. We assume you know nothing about energy efficiency, you're time poor. So it's written in plain English, it's broken down into 20 steps, and you can do it at a pace that suits you. Because I know what it's like to be overwhelmed. It's, when you're running a business, it's so easy to get overwhelmed with just the day-to-day running of the business. So I've written the book with that in mind, that take it step by step, take your own time, and in very easy ways I explain to you the no-cost ways to save money, the low-cost ways to save money, and then if you want to get in and invest on certain things that might really help your business, I'll then tell you what you can invest in, and I'll give you examples of companies who've actually done that, and then how much money they've saved and what their kind of return on investment is.
Fabulous. John D, thank you so much for being part of the TSBI video series and providing some of your expertise to our audiences. I know certainly I've learned some things out of this today. I'm sure our audiences are going to learn a lot of things out of it. And thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.